Hello and welcome to the Ginger Tutorials. Today I'm going to take you through installing Ansible and creating your first playbook. Ansible can be installed using the System Package Manager or the Python Package Manager, which is pip. I'm using Ubuntu, so I'm going to use the Package Manager to install Ansible. It's quite straightforward. It's sudo apt install Ansible. So we just want to do yes to that, and it's going to take it through the install. So it's advised to use the System Package Manager to install Ansible. It's recommended because pip doesn't coordinate with the system manager and could leave you with some inconsistencies in terms of your file system. So this is almost done now. So Ansible is basically an open source automation platform used to automate IT infrastructure, anything from servers to network devices, due to it being an agentless kind of setup. So that means that remote devices don't require any software installed in them. Okay, so now we've got that installed. So let's just have a brief recap. So the purpose I'm using Ansible, let's just clear this, is today I want to create, so if we list this, so the Raspberry Pi I'm using as my Git server. So if you followed the last tutorial, we installed Git, set up a server, and we need to create directories if you've got a new project. So I want to be able to use Ansible to create a new directory, making sure the naming convention is correct, as well as basically initiating a bit of a repository. Okay, so let's jump back onto server. So first of all, what I'm going to do, it's technically a server. I'm going to create a new directory called playbooks. At the moment, there's nothing there, so what am I doing? Create playbooks. Now we have playbooks. And the first thing we want to do is create an inventory. Ansible comes with a kind of default setup for an inventory, but it's in an ini format, but I'm going to create one in a YAML format. So I'll show you the default location, which is Vim. Sorry, not Vim. It's in ect Ansible, and then it's just called hosts. So as you can see, this is the default. Everything's commented out. So if we were to uncomment this, just so you could see, this would be group of web servers with one server called alpha example.org, another beta example.org, and then two IP addresses. So this is in an ini format, but I'm going to create it in a YAML format. So we're going to come out of this. I'm not going to use, you can edit. So this is the default location Ansible looks for. But we're going to create one in the playbooks directory. Now I've done caps. Okay. And again. So I'm just going to do vim inventory .yaml. I'll do the free rather than, you can do it YAML, but I prefer it this way. So now that's going to create a file. YAML files. We'll start with 3 dashes. I'll give it some space. And in this instance, there's kind of like a standard layout. So if you're kind of going to want it all, so that will basically include all. So this is going to be, if you were to call all in your playbook, it would include everything. So I'm just doing the setup. This is kind of like the default, one of the defaults. And then, so all has children. Slightly more than the any setup, but once you've got it, it's more consistent using YAML as well, because you can end up with some inconsistencies again using the key value. Depending on where used, it may not be as consistent. It's not as consistent as YAML, so that's also preferred. So servers. So all has some children called servers, and then servers has hosts. So servers is a group name, and then we have hosts. So now we're gonna, like, hosts is another kind of list, and then this, I'm just gonna, just for the purpose of this, automation server. Is the name of the host, but so you can call it via the name, so it's not like a registered DNS domain name, but you can name it. So now you have to use, if you want to specify the IP address, it's Ansible host, and then you specify your IP address. So it's going to be 12.120.18. And then, so that's under automation server. So if I hit back, so now this is another item under host. So now I'm just going to give it an IP address, because you can just give it an IP address if you want. And it must end with a code. Then what I want to do is I want to create another group. Just make sure it's lined up. I'm going to call that lab. And then lab has host. And then you provide the name of your host. So I'm going to call, so my Git server is on the Raspberry Pi, but I'm just going to call it Git server for this demonstration. So it's called Git server. And then in Git server, it's got Ansible host, which is going to be the IP address of my server. And then I am going to also specify the username. It's not that, it's username. So with YAML files, they are sensitive to white space. So what I'm doing here, sorry, it's not username, it's user. So basically, the reason I specified the username is because the local machine that you're using right now, like if you were to run the playbook, it will basically use your local environment's username. So whatever you're logged in as, it will use that. So I'm just saying, okay, I'm on my Raspberry Pi, I'll just say Pi. It can be overridden later on. This is like the higher level. So our host file is now set up, or inventory file. So I'm going to save that. So you can do some checks to make sure it's valid. You can validate it. Basically, it's called Ansible inventory. Specify the inventory name. So you use the option I to specify the inventory name, inventory, and then we can just list it. it will tell us if there's any errors. So that came out perfect. There's no errors, as you can see. So you got lab, which has hosts, Git server. It kind of reformats it and it outputs it into a YAML format. And basically there's the details again for that YAML host. And then we have servers. It's all kind of grouped. So as you can see here, all children, lab, servers, and then ungrouped. So if you wanted to just get, I don't know, just a particular host, like our Git server. So we'll do host, Git server. You can do this for a group as well. That's not how I put Git server in. And it just returns the information for the Git server. So we know the inventory is valid. We've tested it now. So time to create the playbook. I am going to name it create project Ansible playbook.yaml. So yes, it's another YAML file. Ansible uses a lot of YAML. So let's get straight into it. So 3 dashes to denote the start of the YAML file. I'm gonna go straight in and call the host. So I'm saying from the inventory that we just created, call the Git server. I don't want to gather any facts, so I'm saying false. Then what I want to do is I want to override the Ansible user. If I can type that correctly, with Git. So the username Git. So that, because obviously on the Raspberry Pi, I created the username, which is running for basically as my Git server. So because in the inventory, I specified Pi, I want to override that with Git. Next, what we want to do is we want to be able to prompt for some variables to be input, or one variable, i.e. the directory name. So what we're going to do is we're going to name. So this is the name of the actual variable that I'm inputting right now. So the name of the variable is directory, and the prompt is basically the message you'll see saying, okay, enter the directory name to be created. So that'll kind of, it'll prompt you to input the information. So you'll put in, and it's saying private, I'm saying false. So all that means is, will the text be displayed to the screen? So that's our variable taken care of, because obviously, well, not obviously, we don't want to, so with the directory, we don't want to hard code it. We want to be able to put in a different name each time. So that's why we need a prompt. Next, now that we've got the directory name, there is a, for the repositories, remember they need to end.git if you followed along in creating a Git server. So I want to set a standard. I want to be able to check, is the file set up? Am I giving the directory the correct name? So pre-tasks are ran before roles. Because of our setup, it's gonna run, it will come into here, it will say, okay, use all this information, Git, we'll connect to the Git server using Git. It'll capture the directory name and register the variable under the directory. But now I want to just double check. Basically, I want to set the directory name to the correct format, i.e. .git. So again, it's another way of setting a variable. So I'm doing set fact, and then this is the name of the variable, directory. So I'm kind of overriding it. And then I'm saying, okay, fine. This is the original directory name. Give it .git. But there's a clause. So for this to actually initiate, I'm using a when statement. And basically all I'm doing is I'm saying directory. So it's taking the variable is, and then I'm going to use some regex. If you're familiar with regex. So basically I'm cancelling the backslash is a delimiter, it cancels the next character. So I'm now saying take this as a literal character, period. Otherwise that would be any character. .git #. So I'm saying it must end in .git. And we close that. So it initiates directory as regex .git. Sorry, no. Directory is not. Then do so. Then what I want to do is just want to print a little message. Debug. With the message of, this is the directory name. So it's just giving a nice little output directory of the current name. So you can see it on the screen. This is a directory name. And we're done. For the pre-task checks. So now this will run prior to us running our role. So 1, 2, so roles. So now we can it's a list. So this means kind of start of a list. So I wanna call create project. So now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create some structure because we're using the roles format, and I'm going to create some directories and name one of those directories create project. So this looks good. Let me just get that down spacing. Exit this, no errors. So that looks good. So this is the playbook. Initiate. Save that. Clear this. If we just have a look at our current directory and what we're doing, so now we have the 2. And I'm going to jump back to my Git server and just do the same again, just to jog our memory. What we want to do is so basically this is one directory called project.git, which has all these files inside. We want to kind of replicate this so that we can create a directory and then .git and then initiate the bare repository for Git. So let's just clear this, jump back to the server, clear that. So what we need to do is we're using the role structure. So we need to create some directories for that to work. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do make directory roles, and I want to name a directory called create project. And then, so it's going to create all these directories, and I want to have a tasks directory as well. Okay, so that doesn't work. Make dir. I'm sure you can do it recursively. Appearance. Okay, that doesn't work. Directory roles, project, and tasks. Just P. Okay, so that's how that works. So it'll create the parents as well. So no error if existing. Make parent directories as needed. So that's what I need to do. So I've created all those. So let me just clear this. So now this is a bit more. So now I created 3 folders. What I wanted: roles, create project. So that's the name of the role, which I remember when we in our inventory. Sorry, in the playbook, it calls create role, create project. And then there's going to be tasks. So, so let's just navigate into this. Let me clear this down. So if I cd into roles, well, I can just do that. That'll work. So what I want to create now is, so with it, if there's 8 directories: defaults, files, handlers, libraries, meta, templates, files, and including tasks. If you're going to use them, you need to have a main.yaml file for it to work. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So again, I'm just going to start that off with the 3 dashes. And then what I want to do in the main one is I want it to basically check the name directory whether it exists. So I'm going to name this function that it's going to do. It's going to check if, so I need to do that. Check if the directory exists. And you use a function called stat. So this is built in, and you give it a path. So it will check the stats, and I'm going to register that. So the path is basically going to be the directory name. So directory, there we go. Autocomplete. And then I'm going to register this stat so it can be called later. So it's just, the stat is basically, if you use Linux, it's just the information that's held within it. It's information about the file, sorry. So I'm registering it, and I'm just going to call it project folder. So now if I want to call this variable, the information contained in the variable, I will be calling project folder. Again, it's a good idea to use comments, but I'm not going to do that right now. And then so now I'm not going to stick all of the tasks. I'm going to split them up. So I'm going to do include tasks. So if it works, So if it passes, it will do one thing. If it fails, it does another. So it's split, it's clean, you know what you're doing. So what I want to do is call one, create directory. So I'm going to create another file in task called create dir.yaml file. So it will include this task when, so another condition, not. So the variable I just created, project folder dot stat. So because I use the stat built-in command for Ansible, exists. So that allows you to check, does it exist? It stores that information. So it'll look, it will say, okay, does it exist or not? So I want to know if it doesn't exist, create it. And then I want to create another function. So what I'm going to do now, actually, I'm just going to copy this. Oops. So I'm in Vim. So actually it's Y1. And I am going to paste this in. So again, but now I'm going to say, so what I'm going to do is just change this. Whoopsie. So it's dir exists. And then when exists, so project folder dot, so if it passes this test, then it will include this task. So main.yaml files complete. So I'm going to come out of this, and now I'm going to create the create underscore dir.yaml file. And now I'm going to say, okay, fine, what do we want to do in this? So within this task, I want it to give it a name for this first step. So it's going to be create a new directory for Git. And then I'm going to use the built-in function file. Going to specify the path. So this is, it's running the task on the actual Git server now. It should be, and it will create the directory held in the variable called directory. You've got to specify state under path, under file. So directory, or it could be file, and I can't remember what the other one is, whether it's delete. There's many. And then this is based on a condition. I just use conditions as kind of like a fail safe. So if it does not exist, just in case anything happens, you've just got a bit of a failsafe. And then what I want to do is I just want to give it a message. So I want it to print out a message. So I want it to say, okay, so if it doesn't exist, create this, basically. So I'm just saying print final message. That's the name of it. And it's going to be debug. Oops. And the message is going to be getting carried away. Directory has been created. And close that. And the final thing now, so suppose if you're following once the playbook runs, there's another step, right? You create the directory, but now what do I want to do? I want to initiate a bare repository, because remember I opened it up. So directory. So I create a bare repository. A git bare repository. And then I'm going to use the built-in command. So this is going to be a bash command. So it's going to be git initiate bare. And then I'm going to specify the directory. So that's to create, because remember there was 2 tasks that I included. So this will create, and then I want one if it doesn't create. I want to do some fancy tricks with that too. So this looks all good. No errors have popped up. So I'll write and create this, and then I want to do dir underscore exists. Again. So now this time I'll give it a message to start with. So name, print out, so that I know what's going on now. Directory exists. Debug, and then the message is just so that you can, you know what's going on. If you're not paying attention, you can see it on the screen. It just gives kind of like your own kind of debugging information. Already exists. Something useful. And then I'm just gonna say, choose another name. Again, I was just using the that's off because debug. Yeah, that's good. When just in case you start grouping everything together, at least it won't work. Exists. Ooh. Okay, you're good there. And now, so what I want to do is, I want to be able to see, rather than have to go in and say, okay, what is available? I may as well just list it now. So the name of this, just kind of like it's a name, it's a description. You'll see it'll be print out. List the files in the directory. And then just find. So another command, find path. So I specify the path, which is going to be, again, directory, but this time I am going to use, so I've given it the directory that I want to create, but then if I've given it a name that pre-exists, so now it's going off of that name, it's like, okay, I found it, but now go to that directory, go back a level so that we can list all the files within the directory, and then specify the file type, which is directory. And then we want to register what we find. So register again. Register is another way of giving making it into a variable. So I've named it found, and then the very last thing I want to do is I want to print the details out. I want to be able to see to screen rather than have to log in. The whole purpose of automation is to print the results. Debug, message. So what I'm doing is item.path. So what you'll see in a second, the reason why it's item.path is because I'm going to loop. So I'm looping through. So remember, found basically returned a list of files. So within that it has, I'll call it a method. It's got like, a method. So it's found dot files. So I'm looping through that. And I'm going to use loop control because it will give, when you loop through, it specifies, it shows everything is very verbose. So you kind of want to limit that. So the loop control is, okay, I'm going to label it now each time it loops through and say, okay, give me the item path through this loop. So item, loop control, label, path. So now I've labeled it. So for each loop, there's going to be a path, and now the message is going to output that. So if you don't specify a message, you'll get a default hello world as well in the message. So even though it's this is basically squashing what you see in terms of the output, but then you still need to specify a message, otherwise it's going to be hello world. So that's the end of this. So now, hold on, that looks clear as well. So what I'm going to do is just clear the screen. Come over here. So as we can see, we've just got the one file directory in here. So we want to run the Ansible file. So I'll just go back into the playbooks. So it's Ansible, playbooks, Ansible, did I make a typo? Playbook, and now I want to specify the inventory, add the name of the playbook that I want to run. Pre-task. The offending line, pre-task, syntax error line. Let's have a look. It's probably did I put into it? So it's sensitive to white space, see that? I was slightly off. So let's bring this all in by one. So it's very sensitive to white space using YAML. So let's clear this again. So now I'm going to try again. So it's test. So I forgot to add my key. So Ansible first option is to use SSH keys. So let's just clear this. SSH. Just check if the agent is running. Okay, yeah. So let's clear that. So it's SSH add, and then my key is in my folder SSH. ID git, yes. So I'll add that. Oh, could not open connection. Okay, so maybe it's not running. I thought that was one way of checking it. Eval ssh-agent -s, and then close that, and again add. Okay, so now if I get the password correct, I've added the key. So let's clear that again, and then we'll try the playbook one more time. So before we start, if I just list, so you just see the one file. I'm just gonna call it test, just to make sure it all works. It seems to be working. It's created, and now I have an error. Come on, git init. So in the init, let's just have a look, clarify. So if I do an ls again and cd into test git, yeah, there's no files there. So I'll come out, back. I'm just gonna remove test.git. So clear this. So ISIS. So let me go into, clear this, cd into, was it roles? Oh, I'll do it. And vim, is it create? Yeah, so that should have been one command. So I put a space in there. So it's git init bear. So go back to playbooks, just clear this again, see where we are. Oh, did I not? Oh, hold on, it's a good thing. Test. Okay. So now if you run it again, I'll call it test again. Just test. Okay, there we go. So it created it, and now it's made a change. It says create git bear repository. So now that should cd test it. Yes, and now that's working. Tree, there we go. So I'll clear that. I'm going to do it again now, just as to show you that. I'll clear this too. So I'm going to give it the same name. I'll just go test.git again. So it says, okay, this is the directory name. says, so as you can see in my message, it already exists. Choose another name. And then what I wanted it to do was list the existing directory, so you don't have to go in like what I'm doing here and log into the server to list. It's already done that for you. Project git, test git. So we can do one more. This time I'll give it the .git. Playbooks .git. There we go, looks like a success again. And yep, there we go. So now it's creating our directories with and initiating a big Git repository for us. So rather than having to go into a Git server and do that, now you have a playbook interacting with it, making sure it's got the right naming format, and initializing the repository for you. So there we have it. Ansible installed for Git. Thanks for listening. Until next time.